ICDP, or Commission as we say in short. And we're doing this to celebrate Human Rights Day. But today, the 14th of December, because we also have another treat, the launch of the book entitled Death Penalty, Justice or Revenge, which I'm happy to say has been edited by ICDP Commissioner, Professor Ioana Kusuradi, and includes contributions by our commissioners, many of whom are speaking today, as well as our secretariat, who are also present on this webinar. The book contains interviews with a former death row inmate, who is also on our panel today, a prosecutor and a victim abolitionist, who is currently a representative of a US state. The event will be special as 2020 marks the 10th anniversary for the Commission, which was founded in October 2010 in Madrid. In this webinar, I'm so happy to see that I'm accompanied by my fellow commissioners and the Spanish Secretary of State of Spain, Her Excellency Cristina Gala, who used to be my former colleague at the UN. I would like to especially thank commissioners and former president of Mongolia, Satya Albadosh, for joining us from Ulaanbaatar at such a late hour, as it is already past 11:30 p.m. for him. So we think that this webinar will last 75 minutes. So let me give you an idea of the proceedings. First, I would like to welcome Secretary of State Cristina Gala and ICDP founding president Federico Mayo, former Director General of UNESCO, to kickstart the event with their introductory speeches. We will then listen to a video message from the editor of the book, Commissioner Professor Ioana Kusuradi. I will then give the floor to my fellow commissioners and to Joaquin Jose Martinez, the first Spanish and European citizen released from being under a sentence of death in the United States. All these persons have all contributed articles to the book that we are launching today. They will bring their different perspectives and thereby give a flavor of the book, which is called The Death Penalty, Justice or Revenge. So now I have the great pleasure to give the floor to Her Excellency Cristina Gala, Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs and for Ibero-America and the Caribbean for the Spanish government. And of course, Minister, you also served as the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Communications and Public Information from December 2014 to August 2017. Spain holds the presidency of the support group, and we are very grateful for their support to ICDP. So over to you then, Minister.
Thank you very much, dear President, dear Navi. It's a true honor to be with you today, commissioners and friends and fighters for such an extraordinary and important cause, which is life. It's for me a pleasure to be part of this webinar on the occasion, as you have mentioned, of the International Human Rights Day, which is celebrated on the 10th of December, and also on the 10th anniversary of the International Commission Against the Death Penalty. First of all, let me congratulate very warmly Commissioner Ioana Kusuradi for the timely launch of the book you have already referred to, The Death Penalty, Justice or Revenge. Let me show it to the audience. I think it's a wonderful piece, and it's a fantastic mixture of reflection and very moving personal accounts. This publication contains, among others, recent stories of successes on the way to putting an end to the death penalty in New Mexico, the Philippines, Mongolia, by the 3 commissioners who are just now joining us, who as leaders of their states led the abolition of capital punishment. Thank you very much for what you did. Nevertheless, the publication also contains emotional experiences from a Spanish national compatriot of us after spending 3 years in the death row, who was released and after a new trial. So in our common goal to protecting human life and dignity and achieving a world free of death penalty, it is clear that the International Commission against the Death Penalty has emerged as an important global player in the abolitionist movement. Soft diplomacy, gradual approach, combined with the skilled political talent by the commissioners, have shown the added value of the commission, and the use of the death penalty is clearly decreasing around the world. That is the reason why I'm also proud to announce that the ICDP, the International Commission, has been awarded with the North-South Prize by the Council of Europe, which is an acknowledgement of the defense and protection of human rights. We are truly proud to make this announcement, which just comes from Strasbourg, and it's so well deserved. Over these 10 years, there has been progress and a clear trend towards abolition, which has been embraced by more than 2/3 of the countries of the world, regardless of religions, civilization, and cultures. Last successful examples are the Philippines, Mongolia, and New Mexico. Now, special efforts will be devoted to positive changes and possible changes in Central Asia. However, much remains to be done, and the abolitionist movement faces significant challenges deriving from the rise of populist nationalism and the growing debate on the sovereignty, often fueled by the consequences of the pandemic or domestic turmoil. Among recent pushbacks, we can mention the resumption of federal executions in the United States. We just witnessed two of them very recently. And in this regard, we have to deeply regret the recent execution of the Iranian journalist Ruhollah Zam only 2 days in Tehran. It is a cruel reminder that capital punishment is a reality about which we cannot stand by in silence. Spain, as a founder member of the Commission, will continue to be committed with the abolition as well as with the overall promotion and protection of human rights around the world, around the globe. To conclude, I would like to seize this opportunity to mention new active trends in other fields of the defense of human rights which deserved to be known. Last week, the European Union, during the meeting of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs just before Human Rights Day on the 10th of December, adopted an unprecedented decision to establish and enforce a EU global human rights sanctions regime. It's a landmark initiative to underscore the EU's determination to enhance its role in addressing serious human rights violations and abuses worldwide. However, sanctions alone cannot prevent all human rights violence. It is intended to serve as a deterrent to to serious human rights violations and abuses, and will be part of the human rights toolbox by the or of the European Union. Dear commissioners, dear Navi, dear friends, thank you very much for having me today, sharing the presentation of the book, marking the 10th anniversary of the International Commission and linking this anniversary with International Human Rights Day that we celebrated on the 10th of December. Over to you, dear President. Thank you very much, and delighted to join you for this event.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Christina Gallak, for your consistent support for us, and also that you care so much about the issue. You shared such important information with us on developments in Europe. The ICDP will be following those and see how best we can, you know, get other countries informed about these strategies. So thank you very much. And now I give the floor to ICDP founding president, Federico Mayo, for his introductory remarks. Mr. Mayo has been the president of ICDP from the creation of the organization in 2010 until 2017, but he has not left us. So whenever we call him, he's there, very, very willing to help. So my great pleasure to call upon you then, Federico.
Thank you very much. Thank you, dear President Navi Pillay. You are really a fantastic person. And it is always a great pleasure and inspiration to share with you events like this one. It is also my great pleasure to give this speech after my admired and good friend, Cristina Gallac, Spain's Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs and Ibero-America and Caribbean region. I am very grateful for her wonderful words on Spain's commendable commitment on the abolition of the death penalty, and her words highlighting her and Spain's support to ICDP, where I have had the honor of being founding president with a very, very intensive activity during 7 wonderful years. But now I am so happy that you are, Madam Navi Pillay, you are my successor, because in this way I can be absolutely relaxed, you know, and I follow always the work of ICDP. Christina's dynamic leadership with a human rights orientation is most welcome and extremely needed for us in ICDP, as also in the broader context of this time, because we are suffering at the global level the pandemic of COVID-19 crisis. And in Spain and in the rest of the world, this has very important consequences, not only from the health point of view, but also from the socio-economic aspects. And this situation, particularly on the more vulnerable population, has tremendous effects on human rights, on women's rights, and above all, on the fundamental right to life. I would like to thank, therefore, very much Cristina Gallac for all what she is doing. Dear commissioners, dear friends, I am also very happy to make this intervention where we are launching the book of my fellow commissioner and great and old friend, Professor Ioana Cusuradi. I have admired Ioana for a long time, since our time together working in UNESCO. She has made important contributions to philosophy, and her commitment to the educational process and human rights awareness is inspirational. In her capacity as a very distinguished member of the International Commission Against the Death Penalty, she has been very thought-provoking. She has been always very active. And with her book, The Death Penalty, Justice or Punishment, she has brought together his very important reflections and also others who have been working on this issue. I believe this book will make an important contribution to the works and thinking of the death penalty. We have to go to the core of the matter and make obvious why the death penalty is the most serious violation of the right to life, which cannot be justified by any positive law. The Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, adopted in the year 2000, can constitute a legal basis for further developments. Article number 1 of this charter states that human dignity is inviolable, it must be respected and protected. And Article 2, this is very important. Article 2 on the right to life states that everyone has the right to life. No one shall be condemned to the death penalty or executed. I think this is very important to keep permanently, because now in this aspect, Europe can be the basis for widespreading this idea and this way of action. The purpose of publishing this volume of Ioana Cusuradi is the wish to assist people to reflect on the reasons why the death penalty is an inhuman punishment, which impairs the human dignity of those who impose it. I also believe that the death penalty should end because it perpetuates the culture of violence. From so many centuries, from the old times, always it has been based on absolute male power. It has been based on the culture of violence. An eye for an eye, what was said, makes us all blind. If we look at the countries that are the biggest perpetrators of the capital punishment, we find these countries are also among the largest proponents against peace and tolerance. An end to this outmoded, cruel, and inhuman practice is an important step to increase the respect and protection of the right to life, and also in ending the vicious cycle of revenge and vengeance. It will help build an important environment for tolerance and peace within a country and beyond. This is crucial as the world moves beyond the pandemic and considers other challenges that threaten the very existence of our world, including, I can say this as a scientist, very worried about irreversible processes, including climate change. For all this to happen, I fully agree with Ioana that what is needed is to promote better the ethical education of human rights in general, and within its framework, the abolition of the death penalty at all levels of education and in the media, especially in countries that still implement the death penalty. We need to promote a change of minds. I strongly share with her the belief that access to lifelong education for all must be provided without exception. This must be an education that makes us free and responsible. This is very important. Free and responsible, as stated in Article number 1 of the UNESCO's Constitution. It is time to work together to protect our cultural identity, our diversity and uniqueness, which are our greatest wealth. to protect our shared values and to strengthen our unity and enable us to know and respect each other for peaceful dialogue, for the transition from a culture of violence and imposition to a culture of dialogue and conciliation. Dear friends, dear and admired President, dear Assunta Vivot, I say no to the death penalty, and I will say ever no to the death penalty. Thank you for all.
Thank you very much, former President Federico Maio, and thank you for your continuing leadership and guidance to the Commission. And we'll all join you in that very firm no, and no again, yes. I saw a question come up on the screen, and I wondered if one of our commissioners, Sophie, if you can look into that, with the question relating to revenge and justice. And Sophie, if you heard that from me, Assunta will direct the question to you. But now we have great pleasure to listen to the video message from the key person behind the book, Commissioner Professor Ioana Cușuradi, who holds the UNESCO Chair on Philosophy and Human Rights at Maltepe University, based in Istanbul. She is one of the founding ICDP commissioners. So let's watch the video now.
Dear friends, it is a pleasure for me to address you from Istanbul in order to share with you only two of the main reasons, among other reasons, that make necessary for every human being who is aware of his or her human identity to be against the death penalty and to work for its abolition. And also in order to thank the contributors of the volume I edited, whose title is a question: Death penalty, justice or revenge? Indeed, a rhetorical question. Mr. Joaquin José Martinez, Mr. Shakia Elbeksdorf, Miss Hanne Sophie Greve, Miss Michelle Duvivier Pierre-Louis, Mr. Ibrahim Najjar, Mr. Rajiv Narayan, Mr. Federico Mayor, Miss Navi Pillai, Miss Assunta Vivo, present in this meeting, as well as Mrs. Cristina Gayak for honoring this session. I also wish to extend my warm thanks to those not present: Mr. Robert Cushing, Mr. Gilbert Garcetti, Mr. Bill Richardson, Ms. Gloria Arroyo, Ms. Silvia Zainabo Caetese, Mr. Philip Iya, Mr. Horacio Verbitsky, and Mr. Jose Luis Rodriguez Zapatero. The contributions of all of them make this volume a unique source for those who wish to reflect on the death penalty, this shame of humanity. Let me now tell you the reasons that I wish to share with you, reasons that inevitably lead to the defense of the abolition of the death penalty. The death penalty is mostly imposed on criminals who have committed a murder. That is, certain human beings are condemned to death by law because they killed other human beings. If this is the case, to condemn someone to death is to commit the same act which we consider to be a crime. Is this not transforming law into a means of revenge? Still, it is done in many countries, either for the so-called satisfaction of the relatives of the victims, or because there is the belief that this is a way to reduce criminality, both of which are not the case. Not only anyone who does not confuse punishment with revenge, but also anyone who is aware of what constitutes human dignity, be a prosecutor, a judge, a member of the parliament that votes for a death penalty, or a president of state with whose signature a person is executed, will reject to be part of the killing of a human being, even this human being is a murderer. He or she will do so because he or she rejects to do what is against killing This is an ethical reason against this inhuman punishment, as it is called, and this leads to the defense of the de jure abolition of this punishment. Dear friends, I hope that this volume can assist those who wish to reflect on the reasons why the death penalty is an inhuman punishment, which impairs the human dignity of those who impose it, not of those who are condemned to death, since we are responsible of what we do, not of what others do to us. I thank all of you for kindly participating in this webinar.
Wow. Thank you, Joanna. It's such a great achievement. You continue to inspire us. Joanna is a founding member of ICDP, and we followed very closely as she put the pressure on all of us to write chapters to this book. Congratulations on the book, and we all look forward to reading it. It'll be a source of education for many. So thank you, Joanna. So now we begin the panel discussion. So I will begin by giving the floor to ICDP Commissioner Satya Albadoj, who is the former president of Mongolia. He led his country to abolish the death penalty. He has been a member of the International Commission Against the Death Penalty since 2018. And I would like to thank the Commissioner and former President of Mongolia for joining us from Ulaanbaatar at this late hour. It must be close to midnight there. Commissioner Albadoj, what made you abolish the death penalty in your country? And how was your experience in abolishing the death penalty in your country? Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, our inspirational President Navi Pillai and our fellow commissioners, dear participants. I'm talking from Ulaanbaatar, the capital city of Mongolia. Yeah, I would like to, before to answer to that question, I would like to thank Professor Yona Kuchuradi, my fellow commissioner, whose book published. I think that's a really great contribution for this humane and noble cause. I'm really happy that with that publication of that book. You know, in terms of death penalty, my country, Mongolia, was not soft place. And we had a history related with death penalty for a long time. And Amnesty International actually accounted Mongolia one of the worst case country in terms of death penalty. And the death penalty actually used for political reasons as a political tool to execute tens of thousands of people in Mongolia during so-called Stalinist purge. That death penalty did not bring any good, any justice, any humanity in my country. Because of that, from my first day of my presidency, I decided to commute all death sentences. And after that, I brought this issue, why I'm doing this. And I listed profound reasons why I'm commuting death sentences, why I'm aiming to make my country free of death penalty. But there were many criticisms, but I got great support from international community, organizations, and other good people. And after that, we decided to join to the second optional protocol on death penalty. That actually helped us to have international law in my country against death penalty. And by that law, our judges in our courts, they did not issue death penalty to the people. And After that, we actually organized to change our criminal code. And we changed our criminal code. And in 2017, July, actually Mongolia became, by our criminal code, free of death penalty country. But from the first day of my presidency, it took 8 years. I served my country 2 terms as president. When I came to presidency, my state was a state that killed. When I handed my presidency to my successor, I handed the state which not kills. That was one of my and my people's and my proud achievement in my country. And after that, in row 5 years, actually, that violent criminal acts, violent criminal statistics actually decreased. That was really interesting. And during that time, that was many condemnation, why we stopped death penalty. But now we have that people and society that there are some voices to reintroduce death penalty, but most of the people, and most importantly, our young people are against death penalty. Day by day, Mongolians think that having country free of death penalty is an asset, is our common achievement. It's our great value we brought to our country jointly. And this is a small story related how Mongolia became free of death penalty country. Now we are working with other countries to make our region free of death penalty. I mean Asia, and in Asia there are Central Asia, and we are working to join all those countries in Central Asia to the second optional protocol, and there are only one country left which is not joined, but they are working to join. And I think in the world, there will be one region free of death penalty that's going to be Central Asia and plus Mongolia. This is a really great cause for fighting for the cause of life, for the sanctity of life. And I'm really happy to be commissioner in ICDP, and I congratulate my commission with the 10 years of establishment, and let's work together to make our blue planet free of death penalty planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Shakia Albadot. And I think you are right in the language you use. You said Mongolia does not kill any longer. Sometimes I think when we use the word death penalty, it's like a euphemism. Whereas the reality is that states that have not abolished the death penalty are killing people in the name of their citizens. So you said it as it is. Congratulations on the work you've done in your country. I wish you well. So next, thank you. I would like to give the floor now to Joachim Jose Martinez. I hope I pronounce your name correctly.
Perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you. So he was the first Spanish and European citizen to be released after facing the death penalty in the United States. We at ICDP are very concerned about the situation of the death penalty in the USA. An unprecedented 11 executions have been carried out this year alone since July 2020 by federal authorities. These executions were resumed in July after a hiatus of many years, 10th December for a crime. Wait, no, these executions were resumed in July after a hiatus of 17 years. And of the last two executions, Brandon Bernard was executed on Human Rights Day, 10th December, 2 days ago, for a few days ago, for a crime he had committed when he was 18 years old. The last execution, that of Alfred Bourgeois, was carried out the next day despite serious concerns of severe intellectual disability. Also, I would like to highlight the innocence aspect. In the United States, since the death penalty was reinstated in 1973, more than 170 people who had been wrongly convicted and sentenced to death have been exonerated. And one of them is you, Jose. I understand from your interview in the book that earlier you were a strong supporter actually of the death penalty. So could you tell us about your experiences on how you were sentenced to face the death penalty? We would like to hear why you had never given up. Why did you get exonerated? And how do you see the issues of executions at USA federal level? Could you also let us know about your work with death row inmates in the United States? Welcome very warmly, and we're very interested to hear from you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Quite honestly, I never believed I would enter death penalty. I never believed I would end up on death row. I was a very strong supporter of death penalty. I was the type of person that that would actually watch the news or see a documentary related to a crime that had taken place, and I was so strongly in favor of the death penalty. I used to say, why waste taxpayers' money on these people, housing them on death row? Why not just execute them right away? That was my mentality. That's the way I used to think and the way I was brought up to think. I'm not proud of saying that today, but I must say that that is my mentality and that of many, many North Americans. Thanks to the changes, thanks to the pressure being added from the outside, from the exterior world, from you specific, from the European Parliament, from the Commission, from everyone working together to try to change this idea that there is a second option to death. Nowadays, it's becoming more common to speak out against the death penalty. Back when I was on death row, you know, it wasn't an issue, it wasn't a debate. Basically, saying no to the death penalty in America was like saying no to going to war, for example. You know, it's anti-American. You know, so back then it was my mentality. I never expected to end up on death row. I recall I was sentenced for two crimes, two people that had been murdered, sent to be executed. And what makes all this so unreal is that, you know, I felt betrayed by this system. I felt betrayed by a system I had supported all my life. And I truly believed, even to the very last moment when I was sentenced to death, that the door would open up and they would say, Mr. Martinez, you can go home. but it didn't happen. I could even say that I didn't need to go and get the best attorney in Florida back then, or the best attorney in the United States. I felt I had my own personal attorney, and I felt that was enough. You know, with the truth, and truth will prevail, and everything that you're taught in school growing up in the United States. You know, I really thought I would go home. I would end up home. When I arrived on death row, it was a time of reflection, a time of saying, "Wow, you know, this is real. This is something horrible that's happened, and I need to find out why I'm here." And as time began to go by on death row, and I began to hear the voices of other death row inmates who I must say were, and I still consider to this day, even though they've passed away, they were friends. They were people reaching out to me saying, "You're the Spaniard. How are you? Can we do anything for you? Do you want a book to read? Do you need a paper and pen?" And here are these people that I had criticized practically all my life, saying they should be executed tomorrow, reaching out to me, treating me like one more person, like a friend, like a family member. I will never forget those on death row. That is the reason I speak out against the death penalty. That is the reason I'm here today speaking to you all about it. It's what really saddens me about this whole situation is the fact that if it wasn't for the support that I received, from the European Parliament, the Spanish government, I mean, the organization, everyone just went so out of their way to get me a new trial, to get with the support of my parents, even the Vatican, Pope John Paul II. I mean, overwhelming support. With all the support, I was able to get a new trial. We were also able to raise enough money to get a good defense team, which cost over $1 million back then. These things are expensive. What hurts even more than anything is the fact that it's not just about innocence. It's not a fact whether you have a innocent man on death row. No. You have to have more. You have to have support. You have to have money. You have to have good attorneys. Without all these things, without the organizations behind you, without the European Parliament and everyone there, I wouldn't be free today. It's a heavy cross I have to carry with me to know that same support, 10% of that support received to some of those fellow death row inmates, friends of mine that were on death row when I was there, maybe they would also be here today. It really breaks my heart to be able to know that I'm here because of that support. And I urge everyone out there, everyone that's in this webinar today, to organizations that I can't say more for the International Death Penalty Commission, and I can't say more for all of you working against the death penalty. I mean, we need you. I mean, if it wasn't for you, I would have never been released. I would never be here today. What is going on in America right now is a show of force, especially in the federal level. It's a way of saying, you can't tell us how to do things. We have our laws, we have our ways, and this is the way it's going to be. But that doesn't mean that we have to be discouraged. You need to continue. You have to keep going. You have to go on. Don't stop. We had so many potholes in my 3 years on death row leading up to my final day of release that if my parents would have given up, I would have never been home. So I encourage you and I ask you and I pray for all of you to continue in your great work. I love everything that you've done for me, everything that you continue doing, and I truly hope and pray to God that we can soon also have an end to the death penalty, at least in America, and that could be a good indication that things are going and heading the right direction. It's an honor for me to be here with you all. I truly love you. I'm truly emotional to see that we're still working with everything going on out there, the pandemic, with the COVID, everything going on, that we're still remembering that we have fellow death row inmates, that there's an atrocity being committed almost every day right now in America. Thank you for everything that you do and everything you continue doing.
Well, congratulations on your own efforts of fighting for your innocence as well. You are truly an inspiration to us. So you've made some very important points for us to bear in mind. One, the humanity that is shared inside death row itself. So the person sentenced to death shouldn't be discarded as if they are suddenly subhumans. Secondly, you've stressed the importance of global opposition and action on the part of governments, parliaments, the ICPD, and civil society organizations. And of course, you have stressed there is a need for the global values against the death penalty to be respected. The Commission tries to intervene in almost every case, so it breaks our hearts when, despite all our pressure, the executions are carried out. The most recent, for instance, was of the journalist in Iran, a journalist who was sentenced to death because he allegedly sprouted the protests online, which would not be a crime anywhere else. So we need your voice. Thank you for your own sterling support on ending the death penalty.
Thank you all.
Good luck.
Thank you.
So now I would like to give the floor to Commissioner Anne-Sophie Grave. She is a judge on she was on the European Court of Human Rights. Currently, she's a judge at the Gulatin Court in Bergen, Norway. and Sophie Grief has also paid particular attention to modern-day slavery and trafficking in people. So, Judge, can you tell us about the road to abolition of the death penalty in Europe? What you think about the situation of the death penalty in Belarus, which is the only country in Europe still applying the death penalty? Over to you, Anne-Sophie.
Dear friends, I'm delighted to take you on a small journey where we look at the situation in Europe. Europe, in contrast to most other continents, has been on a very long journey to abolish the death penalty. Actually, that journey started before World War II, and World War II was the breaking point for us. Sometimes people will tell us that we need the death penalty because we need it as a deterrent. Look at Europe, look to Europe. Europe after World War II was completely destroyed. Millions and millions were displaced, killed, hurt. Everything was wrong in Europe. That was actually when we realized we cannot go on like this. And never again means that we have to enhance the understanding of human dignity. For us, that meant step by step through the Council of Europe. You can read more about it in this wonderful book. We were able to convince state after state. And several states said, we need this deterrent. We don't want crime. We want to protect our people. We want to have human rights. We want to have dignity for those who are obeying the law. But actually, by abolishing the death penalty, Europe has become a continent. I was a judge at the European Court of Human Rights that actually addresses the situation for 830 million people plus. The situation in Europe, of course, we have still crime, we have still challenges, many challenges, not to speak of the present pandemic, but so many challenges. But it's a rather safe continent. We don't have massive crime. We don't have massive human rights violations, on and off, yes, unfortunately. But with the death penalty, we would have been no better off. Actually, it has been a golden period in Europe after World War II, when we dared to take this step-by-step approach to abolishing the death penalty. And we are almost completely without it. The people of Belarus suffered tremendously during World War II. Actually, the population is not yet back on the same level of people as it was before World War II. Belarus is no different from the rest of Europe. It's our sisters and brothers, and we will welcome them into this greater family, having abolished the death penalty. They have started on a journey to abolish. I think they will succeed. They are no different. They see what has happened in the rest of Europe. Prosperity, safety, and even financial gains has followed, because when there is a stability, when there is the rule of law, when there is democracy and human rights, we all prosper. Europe is an example of someone who were bent to their knees and beaten to the ground before they realized. But finally, we realized and we have prospered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Greve. What you've reminded us of are the values that prevail of dignity and the ethical considerations around the death penalty. So thank you for bringing the weight of your experience and knowledge to this subject. So now I would give the floor to our commissioner, who is the Vice President, Ibrahim Naja, former Minister of Justice of Lebanon. Vice President Naja, as Minister of Justice in Lebanon, drafted a law to abolish the death penalty in Lebanon in 2010. which however did not get passed, but since then there have been no executions. I would like to take the opportunity to congratulate Lebanon for voting on 17 November 2020 for the very first time in favor of the resolution on a moratorium on the use of the death penalty at the Third Committee of the United Nations. Vice President Naja, what is the situation of the death penalty in the Middle East? What are the challenges? How is the situation of the death penalty in Lebanon now? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Pillay, our president. I'm very happy that all this exchange of views is very inspiring and very rich. The quality of your interventions are really very special. Thank you. I would like also to thank Mr. Federico Mayor for his presence with us. We love him. We never forget him. His presence is always inspiring. We never forgot the some days where he was with us here in Lebanon, leading a delegation and being really the star of everything that counts in the country. I would like also to take the opportunity to thank our Secretariat, mainly Assunta and Rajiv. And let me tell you frankly that I'm very impressed by the testimony we just heard now by Mr. Joachim Jose. It's very important to hear such a testimony. And as long as we're talking about the book of Ioana Kuchuradi, I would like to say a word. This will be a book of reference, and it's full of information. It has to be distributed everywhere to all faculties of law, all the humanities, and it's very important to have a look on everywhere through this very important issue, that very important book. Dear Commissioner, dear President, as long as it comes to the Middle East, I would like to say two words. The first one is about the Middle East in general, and the second word is about Lebanon. You know that death penalty remains, unfortunately, very practiced and very present in the Middle East. It has a very intimate relation with the religion, with the lack of democracy, with the human rights that are not implemented. It's a question of culture. It's a question of freedom of speech, of freedom of information. We have some regimes here in the Middle East, and those regimes are regimes of lack of democracy. And frankly speaking, I think that life, the human life, doesn't matter for them. Many of our regimes like to be politically strong, but not to abide by the rule of law. Iran, excuse me, Iran has just executed a journalist for an unprecedented ground. They said he was doing bad with the whole the whole planet and the world. Something unbelievable. Something that couldn't be qualified as a legal crime. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Syria, those countries continue to practice the capital punishment on a daily basis. And democracy is not there at the rendezvous. There is a lot to do. I know that some countries, like the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Morocco, are trying their best to lessen the application of the capital punishment. But they don't say it. They are afraid. They don't want the criminals to understand that they may escape the capital punishment. The capital punishment remains here in the region as a tool for the regimes, for the despotism to rule the countries in the name of religion, in the name of doctrine, in the name of security, in the name of the struggle against the terrorist. Everything is good enough to justify the capital punishment. We have to say it very loudly. We have to encourage those few countries like Morocco, Qatar, United Arab Emirates to stick to their way in the way of liberate their criminal code from the capital punishment. Of course, we have observed since 1 or 2 years something new. Pope Francesco was now, he stated very clearly that the Catholicism should banish the capital punishment, and it must be set in their catechism. He was followed several weeks ago by the Patriarch of Constantinople. And this is the first time that the Orthodox Church gives a statement like this. But still, we have something that we could name the state killing. And this is a question of culture. It's a question of democracy. It's a question of freedom. Lebanon has stopped execution since 2004. 2004. And for the first time, a few weeks ago, Lebanon has approved the moratorium and the vote at the General Assembly of the United Nations. I have conveyed to our President of the Republic and our Minister of Foreign Affairs a very brief but very expressive letter signed by President Navi Pillay, by President Federico Mayor, and by myself. And they were really very happy to know that somebody has read their position, their statement, and their engagement for a better future against the death penalty. Thank you, all of you. I'm very happy to participate to this webinar. Thank you, our President, and so long.
Thank you, Vice President Naja. You know, you're always an authority on the Middle East, and we are always assured that you are keeping a beady eye there, and we hope that you will one day be welcomed to go to the countries you mentioned in order to just spread awareness about the invalidity of the death penalty. So thank you very much for your contribution. Now I'd like to give the floor to the final member of the panel, Commissioner Michelle Duvivier. She is a former Prime Minister of Haiti. Currently, she is the president of the Foundation Connaissance et Liberté Focale and is the director of the Reconstruction and Development Program of the Open Society Institute in New York. She has also been working as a professor at the Department of Educational Sciences at the University of Quisqueya in Port-au-Prince since 2004. She is a founding member of the International Commission Against the Death Penalty. And I would like to congratulate Michelle on behalf of all the commissioners for being awarded the prestigious World Political Leaders Trailblazer Award 2020 last month. Congratulations. She is our expert on the Caribbean region. So Michelle, how is the situation of the death penalty in the Caribbean countries? Is capital punishment a deterrent there? What are the human rights mechanisms in the region? So I hand you the floor then, Michelle.
Thank you, Mrs. President. Thank you to you all. It is my turn to join my voice to my fellow commissioners to thank you for very inspiring words and comments. For our beloved former president, who spoke eloquently, as usual, about the right to life, the right for life, the right. Nobody is authorized to end nobody's life. The need for education, which is so important, starting from early childhood education, issues of dignity and ethical consideration to end the death penalty. And thank you also for Iona, who worked so hard to gather all the articles until today's publication. I started my article in the book by a quote from our distinguished member, honorary member today, Robert Badinter, in his book, Contre la peine de mort. And I wanted this particular quote to be the beginning of my article about death penalty in the Greater Caribbean. La peine de mort est une défaite pour l'humanité. Death penalty is a, I don't know how to say it in English, a défaite, a defeat for humanity. Elle ne protège pas la société des hommes libres. It doesn't protect society. Elle fait sienne la pratique de l'assassin en l'assassinant à son tour. Elle tombe dans le piège secret que lui tend le crime, celui de verser le sang en l'appelant châtiment. Par l'exécution, l'acte du criminel devient celui de la justice. By executing capital punishment, the act of the criminal becomes that of justice. And this was to exemplify how important it is today, maybe more than ever, to look at what's going on throughout the world. And I'm always very impressed to listen to my fellow commissioners. And Ibrahim just is always so knowledgeable about what's going on. And it is true that until today, even in some countries in the Caribbean, death penalty is seen as a tool to fight terrorism, issues of security, maybe not as much religion and doctrine as Ibrahim said, but certainly violence, drug trafficking. And I remember being in Jamaica and having a discussion at the law school where some students said, Madam Prime Minister, you seem to ignore how gruesome some crimes are committed. I said, I do know, even in my own country. But what gives you the authority to end people's life? And what gives the state the authority to end people's life? So it is true that you will see in my article that there are so many countries in the Caribbean that have not yet abolished the death penalty, but they are on a moratorium, which is important. And for instance, when I went to Jamaica, no execution has taken place since 1989. But there is such a political issue about Parliament and the Prime Minister's office to abolish. There is so much pressure from civil society, even at the university, that they don't have the courage yet, like the former president of Mongolia had, or like Ibrahim had, to end the death penalty, not to sign for capital punishment. And there is still a lot to be done in the Caribbean, in the greater Caribbean. A country like Guatemala had once abolished the death penalty, and now is a reverse position about the death penalty. And I take this opportunity because I might call on you to alert you on what's going on in Haiti. The president of Haiti has decided this year to write a new constitution. And there are pressure, even from the Protestant sects, to reestablish the death penalty. So I'm going to see with Assunta and Rajiv if we can draft a letter with your permission, Madam President, to write to the president of Haiti in advance, because the new constitution is not drafted yet, but is in the process, to prohibit them from reversing back to the death penalty. While Ibrahim had the good insight to write a letter to the Prime Minister in Lebanon and the President to salute their moratorium signature at the UN, we should take advance in writing a letter to the President of Haiti, warning him about reverting to the death penalty. The death penalty was abolished in Haiti in 1987 because there's been so many deaths, people just by the state, so many death penalties during the dictatorship of the Duvalier, that when the people drafting the new constitution in 1987, under the auspices of the Human Rights Commission, decided to abolish the death penalty, that was a very important decision. So reverting back today would be a terrible position. So I'm alerting that on you, and I will follow up with you, Madam President, and other commissioners, so that in advance, we write to the President to warn him about reverting to that decision. So thank you so much for your inspiring, and also Mr. Joachim Jose for his comments and about his own life. And we should continue until the whole world, as the President Elgebord said, our blue planet is free of capital punishment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Durvilla. I'm as anxious as you. All the commissioners will be very anxious over the information you shared with us about recidivism on the death penalty in this new draft law. And we will certainly hold discussions with you and address a letter in that regard.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks. I do have to conclude now because we don't have much time, but may I call upon the Executive Director, Asunta Vivo Kabela, as well as Rajiv Narayan, the Deputy Director, to just guide me about time here, because there have been several questions and in the chat and the questions addressed to some of us and particularly to Jose Martins. Now, how much time do we have, Asunta?
3 minutes, Madam President.
Not much.
The first question is for Joaquin Jose.
Okay.
Is to share your, thank you for sharing the story. And I was wondering, how exactly did you get acquitted? Did you still have to serve much time in prison? Why do you think the US still has the death penalty when it's evidently a system that does not work?
Okay. I think the first question is when it comes down to, I can attribute my release being acquitted to not just one person or one thing. I think it's a perfect combination of everyone working together. It wasn't just the Spanish government, the European Parliament, and the organizations, but also just the common people, the regular people, the everyday people that reached out, that helped us throughout the time I was on death row. The Spanish citizens, I mean, they were just overwhelming with support. Those letters, those prayers, they all helped towards my acquittal. I was able to get a good defense team, which was very expensive as well. I was able to get the proper funds to get this good team of attorneys, and with this team of attorneys, we were able to get a new trial, and I was able to be released and go home. The second question, and what just to summarize, the U.S. continues to apply the death penalty for the simple reason that it's the law in many places, and until that law is not changed, it's going to be continued. It's one of the factors reasons I believe the death penalty was because, plain and simple, it was the law. The law said that if a person committed a crime, cruel, heinous, atrocious, no matter who this person was, that person deserved to receive the death penalty, according to the law in not every state in the United States, but in the states that I lived in. So until we can change the law through pressure, through everything that we're doing today, and through the support of the European Parliament and the European governing parties and everyone across the world, what we need to do is try to change that law, not the mentality. It's just steps towards that. And I think we're heading in the right direction when we see states within the United States that have moratoriums that are abolishing the death penalty. I think we're headed in the right way. So thank you for your question, and the honor is mine for me to be able to speak to you all and be with you all today.
Second question is for Ibrahim Najjar, and the question is: the death penalty may be revenge to a large extent, but justice to a smaller extent. What other punishments can be administered to culprits of terrorism as a way to reduce this global setting without standing the right to life as a human right?
I couldn't understand. Sorry, but there is an echo.
Yes. The question is about revenge. What other punishments be administered to culprits of terrorism as a way to reduce this global setting without standing the right to life as a human right?
No, I cannot understand. Sorry, but you have too much echo in the room, I think. Can you phrase it in one sentence, please?
Yeah, well, let me try then, Commissioner Najjar, because I've found it here. Now, the death penalty may be revenge to a large extent, but justice to a smaller extent. What other punishment can be administered to culprits of terrorism as a way to reduce this vice in global setting, withstanding the right to life as a human right?
You know, terrorism is a big issue now. And it's also a pretext for killing without a judicial sentence to death. Drones, assassination, intelligence. There are many ways to kill people under the ground that they are terrorists. But as long as the terrorists are brought to the court of law, law could sentence them to some decades to imprisonment. But according to Pope Francesco, even in this case, the indefinite imprisonment would be equal to the capital punishment. The terrorism is a very important issue. It has to be reviewed under the provisions of the laws of every country. I will give you an example. The assassination of Prime Minister Hariri in Lebanon was something unprecedented. I think unprecedented in the whole world. But one condition was put by the international community and by the United Nations, was that this act of terrorism couldn't lead to the capital punishment. And this has helped Lebanon. This has helped the politicians here to understand that when such a terrorism is not punished by the death punishment, it means that the other less important crimes couldn't deserve the capital punishment. Terrorism is an issue in itself, but on the international standards, you cannot say that terrorism acts are to be punished by the capital punishment. No.
Thank you for taking that question, Commissioner Najjar. I'll answer briefly to one addressed to me relating to Sri Lanka. In that country, there was a moratorium of over 43 years. But we are always anxious, not only in respect of Sri Lanka, but many, many countries who have had a long moratorium. They were not carrying out any executions, and yet they have the death penalty in their statutes. The risk is that it can be used at any time as new governments come in. The attorney from the UK and USA sent this question on Sri Lanka, and let me inform you that Commissioner Ivan Simonovic and Rajiv Narayan went to Sri Lanka in order to speak to them about the moratorium resolution. And you, of course, are urging us not to stop at moratorium, but to demand the abolition of the death penalty. So that is the principal position of the ICPD. We want a death-free zone in the whole world. As Commissioner Elbadoj told us, Mongolia does not kill any longer. So that says it bluntly. I want to say how much we appreciate these questions and your contributions. Please liaise with us. Because of the time factor, we couldn't have an exchange over all your questions. I want to conclude by thanking the Spanish Secretary of State, Her Excellency Cristina Gallar, and Jose Martinez, my fellow commissioners, Mr. Mayor, Vice President Jean-Michel Duvalier, and Hans-Sophie Grieve, and Professor Joanna Kushiradi for the most memorable contributions to this panel. Commissioner Albadosh explained to us this afternoon how he abolished the death penalty in his country, bringing the question of leadership in the fight against the death penalty. Jose spent 3 years on death row in the USA, bringing the aspect of innocence in the discussion. And Commissioners Naja, Duvivia, and Grave presented the situation of the death penalty in the Middle East, in the Caribbean, and in Europe. All these aspects are reflected in the book of my fellow Commissioner, Professor Joanna Kushiradi. As she mentions in the book, I quote, "Let us hope that this volume will assist both those who are in favor and those who are against the death penalty to reflect on these issues, which can lead to the awareness of our human dignity, our only common identity, which is the root of every ethically valuable and right action." And finally, let me say thank you and congratulations to our wonderful team, Executive Director Asunta Vivo Cavalier and Rajiv Narayan for arranging this whole webinar. Thank you very much to you, and good night, everyone. Good morning to you, Albadosh. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. Thank you.
Assunta, I hope we will have the
Thank you very much. Thank you.
the recording of this.
Yes, yes.
Everything went well. Thank you all.
Bye.
I love you all. Thank you.